The emergency klaxons screamed through the corridors of Terra Station. Humanity's last stronghold in what had once been called the Milky Way, Commander Sarah Chun pressed her palm against the cold metal wall, feeling the vibrations of incoming plasma bombardment shake the entire structure. Through the reinforced viewport, she watched as another human colony ship exploded in brilliant orange flames against the star-studded darkness. "How many more?" she asked without turning around. Lieutenant Marcus Webb's voice cracked as he read from his datapad. 17 ships remaining, Commander. Down from 43 this morning. Sarah closed her eyes and allowed herself exactly 3 seconds of grief before spinning around to face her bridge crew. The command center buzzed with desperate activity as officers coordinated what remained of humanity's scattered fleet. Holographic displays showed the grim reality. Red dots representing enemy vessels outnumbered the blue human ships by nearly 1,000 to 1. The Galactic Council had made their decision unanimous. Every species in known space had voted for the same thing: complete human extinction. The Zephyrians with their crystalline ships, the massive Koroth battlecruisers, the swarming insectoid hives, even the peaceful ethereal collective had turned their weapons toward Earth's children. What had started as trade disputes and territorial disagreements had somehow escalated into a coordinated effort to wipe humanity from existence. "Commander, incoming transmission from the Zephyrian flagship," announced Communications Officer Torres. "Put it through." The main screen flickered to life, revealing the angular, translucent face of High Christarch Velinari. Her voice resonated with the harmonic frequencies that made all Zephyrian speech sound like singing. But there was nothing beautiful about her words. "Human Commander Chun," Velinari began, her multifaceted eyes glowing with cold light. "This is your final opportunity to surrender. Your species has proven itself too dangerous to coexist with civilized beings. Submit now, and we promise quick deaths for your remaining population." Sarah stepped forward, her jaw set in determination. "High Christarch, humanity has done nothing to warrant this genocide. We've honored every treaty, respected every boundary." "Lies!" hissed a new voice as a second screen activated. The massive, scaled head of Warlord Thokgar filled the display, his reptilian features twisted in disgust. "Their kind spreads like a plague across every world you touch. You consume resources without regard for balance. You wage war among yourselves with such brutality that even we Koroth find it disturbing." A third transmission joined the conference call, this one showing the ethereal, floating form of consciousness Prime Azure, representing the ethereal collective. When it spoke, its voice seemed to come from everywhere at once. "The mathematics are clear, human. Your species' expansion patterns indicate you will consume 43% of available galactic resources within 5 centuries. This cannot be permitted. You're condemning us based on projections?" Sarah's voice rose in disbelief. "On things that might happen?" "Not might," buzzed the clicking, chittering voice of Hive Queen Zexthara as her transmission joined the others. Her compound eyes reflected 1,000 tiny images of the human commander. "Will happen. We have seen it on every world you touch. You take until nothing remains." Sarah looked around at her crew, seeing the same desperate defiance in their eyes that burned in her own chest. Humanity had always been the newcomers to galactic civilization, arriving on the scene only 2 centuries ago when they achieved faster-than-light travel. They had been welcomed cautiously at first, seen as a young but promising species. But as human colonies spread and their population exploded across dozens of worlds, that welcome had turned to suspicion, then fear, and finally to this coordinated extermination effort. "If that's truly what you believe," Sarah said slowly, her voice carrying across all 4 alien transmissions, "then you've made a terrible mistake." "And what mistake is that, human?" Velinari's harmonic voice carried a note of amusement. "You've given us a reason to stop holding back." The alien leaders exchanged glances across their respective screens. Warlord Thokgar's laugh was a deep, rumbling roar. "Hold back? Your fleets are scattered, your worlds burn, your population huddles in fear across a handful of stations. What could you possibly do now that you haven't already tried? Sarah turned to her tactical officer. Commander Parks, activate Protocol 7. Parks hesitated for just a moment, his finger hovering over a red button that had never been pressed in the 200 years since humanity had reached the stars. Commander, are you certain? Once we activate this, there's no going back. They want to see what humanity is really capable of, Sarah said, her voice carrying to every human ship in the system through the open-com channels. Let's show them. The tactical officer pressed the button dot across the Sol system, buried deep beneath Luna's surface. Ancient servers that had been dormant for decades suddenly hummed to life. Quantum processors that had calculated humanity's first faster-than-light jumps began working on an entirely different kind of problem. Every human ship, from the massive dreadnoughts to the smallest fighters, received the same transmission, a complex series of mathematical equations that looked like gibberish to any non-human observer, but to human pilots and engineers they were something far more significant. They were the unlocked specifications for technologies that humanity had developed but never deployed. Technologies that had been deemed too dangerous, too devastating, too inhumane for civilized warfare. The Koroth were the first to notice something was wrong. Warlord Thokgar's flagship detected massive energy signatures building within the human fleet, power levels that shouldn't have been possible with their known technology. His reptilian eyes narrowed as he studied the readings. What are they doing? He growled to his science officer. Before anyone could answer, the first human ship simply vanished. Not destroyed, not damaged, just gone from all sensors as if it had never existed. Then another disappeared, and another. Some kind of cloaking technology? Suggested consciousness prime azure, its ethereal form shimmering with confusion. No, whispered Hive Queen Zextara, her compound eyes wide with sudden fear. They're not hiding. They're moving. High Christarch Velinaria's harmonic voice turned discordant with alarm. Moving where? Our sensors show no jump signatures, no dimensional rifts. The answer came 30 seconds later when human ships began materializing inside the alien formations, not outside them. Ships that moved faster than anything the galaxy had ever seen. That phased through solid matter like ghosts. That wielded weapons that didn't just destroy their targets, but seemed to unmake them from existence itself. The war that the Galactic Council thought would end in. Humanity's extinction had just begun in earnest. And for the first time in their coordinated campaign, the alien species realized they might have underestimated exactly what they were dealing with. Captain Elena Vasquez felt her consciousness merge with her ship as the neural interface fully activated. The sensation was beyond description, like suddenly having a body made of steel and plasma instead of flesh and bone. Her thoughts moved at the speed of light through quantum processors, and she could feel every bolt, every wire, every weapon system as if they were extensions of her own body. The HSS Retribution phased through the hull of a Koroth battlecruiser like it was made of mist. The alien crew barely had time to register the impossible sight before Elena's new weapon systems engaged. Instead of the standard plasma cannons that human ships had used for 2 centuries, something entirely different emerged from her vessel's weapon ports, streams of what looked like liquid. Darkness poured from the Retribution's guns, washing over the Koroth ship's shields like they didn't exist. Where the strange energy touched the alien vessel's hull, matter simply ceased to be. Not exploded, not vaporized, but actually deleted from existence, leaving perfectly smooth spherical voids that exposed the ship's interior to vacuum. What in the name of the Great Hunt? Warlord Thokgar roared as he watched his most powerful dreadnought dissolve like sugar in rain. What are those weapons? His science officer's voice trembled as she read from her instruments. Unknown energy type, Warlord. Our databases have no record of anything like this. The matter isn't being destroyed, it's being converted to null-state particles. Across the battlefield, similar scenes of impossible technology were unfolding. The SS Vengeance had somehow folded space around itself, allowing it to fire weapons at targets that were technically behind planets. The HSS Defiance was moving so fast it appeared in 3 different locations simultaneously. Its pilot somehow existing in multiple quantum states at once. High Christarch. Velinari watched her crystalline fleet's perfect formations shatter as human ships danced between dimensions, striking from angles that shouldn't have existed in normal 3-dimensional space. Her harmonic voice had lost all its musical quality, becoming harsh and discordant with fear. "Impossible," she screamed. "The humans have only had faster-than-light travel for 2 centuries. These technologies require millennia of development." "Unless they already had them," Consciousness Prime Azure observed, its ethereal form flickering with anxiety. "Unless they've been deliberately limiting themselves." Commander Sarah Chun stood in the center of Terra Station's command bridge, watching through the tactical displays as humanity's true capabilities unfolded across the battlefield. Data streams flowed past her eyes at impossible speeds, her own neural implants having been activated for the first time since the Academy. She could feel every human ship in the system, every pilot's thoughts, every tactical decision being made in perfect coordination. "How long have we been hiding this?" asked Lieutenant Webb, his voice barely a whisper. "Since before we reached the stars," Sarah replied, her consciousness touching the vast network that connected every human military asset. Earth's nations fought 2 world wars with primitive chemical explosives and projectile weapons. Do you really think we stopped innovating when we discovered nuclear fission? The truth was something that had been carefully hidden even from most of humanity. While the public celebrated their first steps into space with conventional rockets and fusion drives, Earth's military-industrial complexes had been developing technologies that bordered on magical. Quantum manipulation, dimensional folding, matter conversion, consciousness transfer. Weapons and systems that were deemed too dangerous for a species that was still learning to coexist with itself. "The Cold War never really ended," Sarah continued, accessing memories that had been classified above her clearance level until Protocol 7 activated. It went underground, became about technologies that could reshape reality itself. When we finally achieved peace on Earth, we decided to lock these weapons away. We told ourselves we'd never need them. A new voice crackled over the communication system. "Hive Queen Zexthara to all Council forces. Retreat from Sector 7 immediately. Repeat, full retreat from Sector 7. On the tactical display, Sarah watched as the human ship HSS Prometheus engaged an entire insectoid swarm fleet. The ship had somehow multiplied itself, creating exact duplicates that each moved independently. But as Sarah's enhanced consciousness analyzed the readings, she realized they weren't duplicates at all. The ship was existing in multiple parallel dimensions simultaneously. Overlapping its presence across several realities at once, the insectoid ships fired their bioplasma weapons, but the energy simply passed through most of the Prometheus's forms like they were ghosts. Only when the human ship chose to solidify in a specific dimension did its weapons become tangible, and when they did, entire swarms of insectoid fighters simply winked out of existence. "By the eternal void," Warlord Thokgar's voice carried across the alien communication channels. "How is this possible?" "Because you misunderstood what humans are," came a new voice, one that made every alien commander freeze in recognition. It was Admiral Harrison Clark, the man who had been reported dead 3 months ago when his exploration fleet had vanished in the Outer Rim. "Admiral Clark?" Sarah's voice carried surprise and hope in equal measure. "We thought you were lost." "Not lost, Commander. Preparing." Clark's image appeared on the main screen, but something was different about him. His eyes held depths that hadn't been there before, and when he spoke, his voice carried harmonics that suggested his consciousness was operating on multiple levels simultaneously. "We've been testing these systems in deep space, making sure they were fully functional before this moment." The tactical display updated to show dozens of new contacts appearing throughout the system. Ships that moved like living things, that seemed to phase in and out of reality at will, that wielded weapons that turned entire enemy squadrons into expanding clouds of quantum foam. "You see," Admiral Clark continued, addressing both human and alien forces, "humanity learned something important during our time on Earth. We learned that sometimes the only way to ensure peace is to be so terrifyingly powerful that no one dares break it. A Zephyrian cruiser tried to retreat, its crystalline form accelerating toward a jump point. The human ship pursuing it didn't bother to match its speed. Instead, it somehow reached forward through time itself, arriving at the jump point before the alien ship had even started moving toward it. We developed these technologies during our darkest periods, Clark explained, his voice reaching every ship in the system. When we thought we might destroy ourselves, we created tools that could destroy everything. But instead of using them, we chose to hide them. To pretend we were just another young species, stumbling toward the stars with primitive fusion drives and kinetic weapons. The alien fleets, which had outnumbered humanity by nearly 1,000 to 1, were now scattering in all directions. But space itself seemed to be working against them. Jump points led to dead ends, navigation systems showed false readings, and human ships appeared wherever they tried to run. "But you had to push us?" Sarah said, taking over the communication. Her voice now carried the authority of someone connected to every human military asset in the galaxy. "You had to vote for our extinction. You had to make us choose between revealing what we really are and letting our species die." High Christarch Velinary-S flagship was one of the last to attempt retreat, its advanced crystalline technology allowing it to phase partially out of normal space. But as it tried to escape, it found itself face to face with something that should have been impossible, a human ship that existed in all dimensions simultaneously, blocking every possible route of escape. "So now you know," Admiral Clark announced as human forces took control of every major jump point in the system. "This is what humanity looks like when we stop playing nice. This is what happens when you threaten the extinction of a species that has been deliberately holding back technologies that could reshape the galaxy itself." The battle that was supposed to be humanity's last stand had become something entirely different. It had become a demonstration of power so absolute that it made the combined might of the Galactic Council look like children throwing stones at a starship, and this was just the beginning. The Galactic Council's emergency session convened in the ancient chambers on Nexus Prime, but the atmosphere was far from the confident unity that had declared humanity's extinction just days earlier. Representatives from dozens of species huddled together, their various forms trembling with fear and confusion as reports poured in from across the galaxy. Ambassador Kethver of the Stellar Coalition spoke first, his 6 arms gesturing frantically as he addressed the assembly. "The humans have taken 17 star systems in the past 6 hours. Not conquered, taken. Their ships appear from nowhere, disable our defenses without firing a shot, and our fleet simply surrender rather than face those impossible weapons." High Christarch Velinary-S harmonic voice cracked as she tried to maintain her composure. The Zephyrian Third Fleet encountered a single human vessel near the Prison Nebula. 1 ship against 300 of our finest crystal ships. She paused, her multifaceted eyes reflecting the chamber's light in fractal patterns. When our commander demanded surrender, the human pilot simply said no. The ship then proceeded to fold space around itself until it was simultaneously attacking from every possible angle. "My fleet's weapons could not target something that existed in 17 dimensions at once." "At least your fleet had the option to retreat," rumbled Warlord Thokar, his massive reptilian form slumped in defeat. "The humans sent a message to my stronghold world of Krexter. A single message that said, 'Surrender now and your people will be relocated peacefully. Refuse, and we will demonstrate why your ancestors feared the dark.'" Between stars, the Koroth warlord's voice dropped to a whisper. "I refused. I had to. The honor of my clan demanded it." He looked around the chamber with haunted eyes. "They didn't bombard the planet. They didn't invade. They simply moved it." Shocked silence filled the assembly hall. "Moved it?" squeaked Representative Pipkin of the diminutive collective, his tiny form barely visible at the speaker's podium. "The entire planet. Krexter now orbits a red dwarf star on the far side of the galaxy. 8 billion Koroth, our greatest military stronghold, our weapons factories, our training grounds. All of it simply relocated. When I demanded to know how, the human commander said they had adjusted the local gravitational constants. As if moving a planet was no more difficult than adjusting furniture. Consciousness Primazure flickered into existence at the center of the chamber, its ethereal form pulsing with anxiety. The humans have ceased their advance. All human fleets have taken position at the edge of our respective territories and they're waiting. Waiting for what? Asked Senator Glixara of the Peaceful Trade Federation. For us to make a choice? Came a new voice that made every being in the chamber freeze. The air itself seemed to solidify as Admiral Harrison Clark materialized in the center of the assembly. His form translucent but clearly present despite the fact that Nexus Prime's security systems should have made such an appearance impossible. Admiral Clark? High Christarch Velinari's voice carried forced diplomacy despite her obvious terror. How did you... We are on a secure world, protected by quantum barriers. Your quantum barriers are based on technology that's about 3,000 years behind what humanity actually developed. Clark replied casually, his form becoming more solid as he spoke. We've been watching this session since it began. We've been watching all of your sessions, actually, for the past 2 centuries. The implications of that statement rippled through the assembly like a shockwave. If the humans could bypass Nexus Prime security, could penetrate the most protected location in the galaxy, then nowhere was safe from them. You wanted to destroy us because you feared we would consume 43% of galactic resources. Clark continued, his voice carrying to every corner of the chamber without amplification. But you never asked yourselves what that statistic actually represented. Holographic displays materialized around the assembly, showing complex mathematical models and resource distribution charts that none of the assembled delegates recognized. 43% of resources, but distributed among terraformed worlds that previously hosted no life. We don't take inhabited worlds. We create new ones. The display showed images of barren rocks being transformed into garden worlds, of asteroid belts being converted into orbital habitats, of gas giants being partially mined while still maintaining their atmospheric integrity for indigenous life forms. You feared us because we breed quickly and expand rapidly, Clark said. And the displays shifted to show population dynamics across human space. But you never considered what that expansion actually looked like. The truth was staggering. Humanity wasn't spreading like a plague across the galaxy. They were gardening it. Every world they touched became more habitable, not less. Their consumption of resources involved converting lifeless matter into environments where new forms of life could flourish. But that's impossible, protested Science. Coordinator Velthix of the Academic Alliance. Your species is barely 3 centuries out of their gravity well. You should be struggling with basic interstellar travel, not reshaping matter at the molecular level. Clark's smile was sad and patient. You're thinking like a species that developed naturally. Humanity didn't develop naturally. We were forged in fire, shaped by catastrophe. Refined by wars that should have destroyed us but instead made us stronger. The displays changed again, showing Earth's history not as the sanitized version that had been shared with galactic civilization, but the brutal reality. Wars that raged for decades. Plagues that killed hundreds of millions. Natural disasters that leveled entire continents. And through it all, humans adapting, evolving, innovating at a pace that should have been impossible. We developed fusion power while our planet was still radioactive from nuclear weapons. We created artificial intelligence while half our population lived in refugee camps. We unlocked quantum mechanics while fighting wars with weapons that could crack continents. Clark gestured to the assembled delegates. Every other species in this chamber developed their technology during peacetime over millennia of steady progress. Humanity developed theirs during centuries of desperation. But why hide it? Demanded Warlord Thogar. Why pretend to be weak? Because we learned something that no other species has had to learn, Clark replied. We learned that being the strongest doesn't make you safe. It makes everyone else afraid of you. And fear makes people do stupid things. The Admiral gestured around the chamber. Like voting to exterminate an entire species because they might become too successful. The weight of that statement settled over the assembly like a heavy blanket. Every delegate understood what he was saying. They had proven humanity's point in the most dramatic way possible. So what happens now? Asked Consciousness Prime Azure, its voice barely above a whisper. Now you make a choice, Clark said, his form beginning to fade. You can accept that humanity is here to stay, that we're not your enemies despite our capabilities, and we can work together to make the galaxy a better place for everyone. His eyes hardened. Or you can continue trying to eliminate us, and discover exactly how creative humans can be when we stop caring about being civilized. Before anyone could respond, he added one final statement that would echo through galactic history. You called us a plague because we spread and adapt and consume resources. But plagues can be cured, contained, or eliminated. His smile was sharp as quantum steel. Gardeners, on the other hand, decide which plants get to grow and which ones need to be pruned. Clark vanished as suddenly as he had appeared, leaving the Galactic Council to contemplate a reality they had never imagined. Humanity hadn't just revealed advanced weapons or superior technology. They had revealed themselves to be something unprecedented in galactic history, a species that had achieved godlike power, but chose to use it with restraint. The question was whether that restraint would continue if the galaxy kept trying to destroy them. 3 days after Admiral Clark's appearance at the Galactic Council, the assembled species received a message that appeared simultaneously on every communication device in their territories. Not through their networks, not through their established channels, but directly materialized in their technology, as if the humans had simply willed the words into existence. You have 48 hours to decide, the message read in perfect translation for each species' primary language. Choose cooperation or witness the full scope of what you have awakened. High Christarch Velinari stood in her private chambers aboard the Zephyrian flagship, staring out at the stars that no longer seemed distant or safe. Her crystalline form reflected the light from 1,000 different angles, creating rainbow patterns that danced across the walls. She had called for this war, had cast the first vote for human extinction. The weight of that decision pressed down on her like the gravity of a collapsed star. High Christarch, came the harmonic voice of her aide, Sub-Christarch Melinar. The Council requests your response to the human ultimatum. 48 hours, Velinari sang softly. Do you know what humans can accomplish in 48 hours, Melinar? No, High Christarch. Neither do I, and that terrifies me more than any weapon they've shown us so far. On the Koroth homeworld of Kor Prime, Warlord Thokar paced the halls of his ancestral stronghold. Ancient weapons lined the walls, trophies from 1,000 conquered worlds, symbols of Koroth military might that now seemed as outdated as stone spears. His massive claws scraped furrows in the metal floor as he walked, his reptilian mind racing through scenarios, each one ending in Koroth defeat. My lord, his aide approached cautiously. The clan leaders demand an answer. Do we fight or surrender? Fighting implies we have a chance of victory, Thokar growled. What do you call it when you attack something that can move your entire planet to another star system? Suicide, my lord, precisely. But not all species were ready to concede. In the depths of space, the insectoid hive mind had been working feverishly since the humans' demonstration began. Queen Ziexthara's consciousness touched each of her billion children simultaneously, coordinating an effort that spanned 17 systems. If the humans wanted to see what organized resistance looked like, the hive would show them. They are powerful, Ziexthara's thoughts buzzed across the collective consciousness, but they are few. We number in the trillions. We will overwhelm them through sheer mass. The hive had been building in secret since the first human demonstration. Bioships that could reproduce themselves, weapons that grew from living tissue, shields that adapted and evolved with each attack. If humanity wanted a war of innovation, The insectoid hive was prepared to give them one dot as the 48-hour deadline approached. Three distinct responses emerged from the galactic community. The ethereal collective and several smaller species sent formal surrender documents, acknowledging human supremacy and requesting negotiated terms. The Zephyrians and Koroth remained silent, neither surrendering nor preparing for war, trapped in indecision. And the insectoid hive sent a single message: we do not yield to any species. Come and take what you think you deserve. When the deadline arrived, the human response was immediate and unprecedented. Commander Sarah Chun stood on the observation deck of Terra Station, watching as space itself seemed to ripple and fold around human ships positioned throughout the galaxy. But this wasn't another demonstration of military might. This was something else entirely. "Admiral," she spoke into her communication unit. "Are you certain about this approach?" Admiral Clark's voice carried across the quantum entanglement. Communicator with perfect clarity despite the vast distances involved. The hive wants to see what happens when an unstoppable force meets an immovable object. Let's show them that we're neither. The first sign that something extraordinary was happening came from the edges of insectoid space. Their outer sensor networks detected massive spatial distortions, but the readings made no sense. It appeared as if entire sectors of space were simply ... moving. Hive Queen. Zexthara's compound eyes widened in confusion as reports flooded her consciousness. "The humans are not attacking our positions," her drone minds reported. "They are moving our positions." What the insectoid hive was experiencing was beyond their comprehension. The humans weren't engaging in battle, conquering territory, or destroying infrastructure. They were literally rearranging the spatial coordinates of hive systems, repositioning them throughout the galaxy like pieces on a cosmic game board. "Impossible," Zexthara buzzed, but the evidence was undeniable. Her most heavily fortified system, containing 17 world ships and 1 billion warrior drones, now found itself orbiting a star in a completely different galaxy. Not destroyed, not conquered, just ... relocated. How? She demanded of her science drones. "Unknown, my queen. The humans appear to be manipulating space-time itself at the macro level. They are treating three-dimensional reality as if it were a fluid medium that can be reshaped at will. But the hive's repositioning was only the beginning." As Zexthara tried to coordinate her scattered forces, she discovered that the humans had done something even more disturbing than moving her fleets. They had given her a choice. Each relocated hive system found itself in a unique situation. Some orbited beautiful garden worlds where other species lived in peace and prosperity. Others were positioned near massive stellar phenomena that could provide unlimited energy for expansion. Several were placed at the intersections of major trade routes where the hive could establish profitable relationships with other species. And in each location, the same message waited: choose. Become part of the galactic community, or remain isolated until you decide to join us. Your fleets are intact, your populations are safe, your technology is unharmed. The only thing that has changed is that you are no longer in a position to threaten others. The psychological impact was devastating. The hive had prepared for war, for conquest, for glorious battle against a worthy enemy. Instead, they had been treated like unruly children, picked up and moved to where they could think about their behavior without hurting anyone. Similar demonstrations were happening throughout the galaxy. The few species that had chosen to resist human ultimatums found themselves facing not destruction, but forced relocation to isolated systems where they could contemplate their choices without endangering others. This is humiliation beyond comprehension. Warlord Thokgar growled as he watched the reports. "They're not even treating us like enemies. They're treating us like we're not worth the effort of a real war," his aide finished quietly. High Christarch. Velinari received the message at the same time as every other galactic leader. The demonstration is complete. Any species that wishes to rejoin galactic civilization may request pickup from their isolation systems. Those who prefer to remain apart are welcome to do so. We will check on you periodically to ensure you have everything you need. The message was signed simply, Humanity, your new neighbors. But the most disturbing part wasn't the casual tone or the overwhelming display of power. It was the postscript that appeared on every leader's personal communication device. We really did want to be friends. We still do. But we understand if you need some time to adjust to the new reality. Take as long as you need. We're patient. As the scope of what humanity had accomplished became clear, one fact stood out above all others. They had ended a galaxy-wide war without firing a single shot in anger. They had demonstrated such overwhelming superiority that resistance became not just futile, but pointless. And they had done it all while keeping every opposing population safe and unharmed. The message was clear. Humanity didn't just have godlike power. They had the wisdom to use it with mercy. They were offering their former enemies the same choice they had always preferred to make: cooperation over domination, partnership over conquest. But for those who had declared humanity's extinction, one question remained: what happens when gods lose their patience? 6 months had passed since humanity's demonstration, and the galaxy had settled into an uneasy equilibrium. Most species had accepted humanity's terms and returned to their original territories, but the psychological landscape of galactic civilization had changed forever. The beings who had once considered themselves the masters of known space now understood they were merely tenants in a universe where humans were the landlords. Ambassador Elena Rodriguez walked through the halls of the newly constructed Unity Station, a massive orbital facility positioned at the galactic center where all species could meet on neutral ground. The station itself was a testament to humanity's capabilities. Built in just 3 weeks from raw materials harvested from a nearby asteroid field. But more impressive than its construction was what it represented: humanity's commitment to building rather than destroying the first galactic reconciliation conference was about to begin, and Elena could feel the tension in the air like a physical presence. Representatives from every major species were gathering in the central assembly chamber, but the dynamics had shifted dramatically from the old Galactic Council sessions. Hi. Christarch Velinari was the first to arrive, her crystalline form moving with careful dignity despite the obvious weight of defeat. She had spent the past months in meditation, trying to understand how her species' superiority complex had led them to such a catastrophic miscalculation. Ambassador Rodriguez, she sang in harmonic tones that carried undertones of humility. I must thank humanity for its ... restraint. Many species would have responded to our genocide vote with actual genocide. That's not who we are, Elena replied simply, though I understand why it might be hard to believe, given what you've seen us capable of. Warlord Thogar entered next, his massive reptilian form smaller somehow, as if the defeat had physically diminished him. The proud warrior culture of the Koroth had been shattered not by superior force, but by the realization that their concept of strength was hopelessly primitive compared to humanity's reality. Human ambassador, he rumbled, my people demand to know, what are your true intentions? You could rule us all as conquered subjects, yet you treat us as equals. Why? Because ruling you would be boring, came a new voice as Admiral Clark materialized in the chamber. Several alien delegates flinched at his sudden appearance, but Elena noticed they no longer reached for weapons. They had learned that such gestures were pointless against beings who could manipulate reality itself. Boring? Consciousness Prime Azure flickered into existence, its ethereal form pulsing with confusion. You could reshape the galaxy according to your will. You could eliminate want, suffering, even death itself. How is such power boring? Clark smiled, gesturing to a holographic display that showed Earth as it had been 2 centuries ago. A blue-green world teeming with diverse life. Do you know what humans learned during our darkest periods? We learned that having the power to control everything doesn't make you happy. It makes you isolated. The display shifted to show Earth's early space colonies, then humanity's first contact with alien species. The wonder and excitement that had defined those early interactions. We developed all this power, Clark continued. But what we really wanted was something much simpler: friends, Companions, other minds to share the universe with. His expression grew sad. But every time we tried to make friends, they became afraid of us. So we hid our capabilities, pretended to be weaker than we were. Hoped that if we seemed harmless enough, you might accept us as equals. But we couldn't, whispered Hive Queen Zexthara as she entered the chamber, her compound eyes reflecting the light in fractal patterns. Even believing you to be primitives, we still feared your expansion, your adaptability, your potential. And that fear led you to vote for our extinction, Elena said, her voice carrying no anger, just sadness, which forced us to reveal what we really are. The chamber fell silent as the weight of that revelation settled over the assembled delegates. They had created the very situation they had feared most, turned a species that wanted friendship into one that could enforce any demand they might make. So what happens now? Asked Representative Kethver of the Stellar Coalition, his 6 arms gesturing nervously. You have shown us that resistance is futile, that our combined might is nothing compared to your capabilities. Do we simply accept permanent subjugation? Subjugation? Admiral Clark looked genuinely surprised. Is that what you think this is? The holographic display changed again, showing detailed plans for joint scientific expeditions, cultural exchange programs, and collaborative terraforming projects. Every proposal was designed as a true partnership, with alien species contributing their unique knowledge and capabilities alongside humanity's advanced technology. We don't want subjects, Elena explained. We want partners. The Zephyrian mastery of harmonic crystalline structures could revolutionize our energy systems. Koroth military doctrine has strategic principles we've never considered. The ethereal collective's understanding of consciousness could help us develop better interfaces between mind and machine. The insectoid hive's biological engineering could solve resource problems we didn't even know we had. But why would you need our help? Velinari's harmonic voice carried genuine confusion. You have power beyond our comprehension. What could we possibly offer? Clark's smile was warm and genuine. Perspective, challenge, growth. He gestured around the chamber. Humans develop technology quickly because we're always trying to solve problems. But the biggest problem we've always faced is loneliness. We're the only human species in the universe. You are each the only representatives of your own unique evolutionary paths. Together we could become something none of us could achieve alone. And if we refuse? Warlord Thokgar's voice carried the weight of his species' pride. If we cannot accept partnership with those who have humiliated us so thoroughly, then you refuse, Elena replied simply. We'll check on you periodically, make sure you have everything you need, and leave you alone to develop however you choose. Maybe in a few centuries you'll feel differently. Maybe you won't. Either way is fine with us. The casual acceptance in her voice was perhaps more shocking than any demonstration of power could have been. Humanity truly didn't need them. They were offering partnership not from necessity, but from genuine desire for companionship. There is something else, Consciousness Prime Azure observed, its form flickering with realization. You said you developed these technologies to solve problems. What problems does humanity still face that require such capabilities? The chamber fell silent as every delegate realized they had been thinking too small. If humanity had developed such incredible power to handle their own internal challenges, what threats existed that required such preparation? Admiral Clark's expression grew serious. The galaxy is vast and most of it remains unexplored. In our expansion efforts, we've detected signals from civilizations far older than any of ours, technologies that make our advances look primitive, and phenomena that suggest intelligence on scales we can barely comprehend. He paused, letting the implications sink in. We've been preparing not just for conflicts with our neighbors, but for encounters with forces that could threaten all organic life in this galaxy. The revelation hung in the air like a thunderclap. Humanity hadn't been hiding their power to deceive anyone. They had been quietly preparing for threats that none of the other species had even imagined. You want allies? Zexthara buzzed with sudden understanding. Not subjects, not trading partners, but true allies. Because something is coming that will require all of our combined strengths to survive. Something has been coming for a long time, Clark confirmed. We just didn't know when it would arrive. Our deep space monitoring stations detected the first scout probes 6 months ago. Whatever sent them will follow eventually. Elena stepped forward, addressing the assembled representatives with quiet intensity. So yes, you have a choice to make. You can join us in preparing for what's coming, contribute your unique strengths to a combined defense of organic life itself. Or you can remain in isolation, safe and protected, while we handle whatever emerges from the dark between galaxies. But either way, Admiral Clark added, we'll do everything in our power to protect you. Because despite everything that's happened, we still want to be friends. The silence that followed was profound. Every delegate understood that they weren't just choosing the future of their species, but possibly the fate of organic intelligence in their galaxy. The question was no longer whether humanity was too dangerous to coexist with. The question was whether the galaxy could afford to refuse their offer of partnership. 2 years had passed since the Galactic Reconciliation Conference, and the transformation of known space had been nothing short of miraculous. The species that had once voted for humanity's extinction now worked alongside their former enemies in ways that would have seemed impossible before the revelation of human capabilities on Unity Station. Now expanded into a massive complex spanning several thousand kilometers, Ambassador Elena Rodriguez stood in the Joint Operations Center, watching holographic displays that showed the combined fleets of 16 species working in perfect coordination. The sight still filled her with wonder, not because of the technological marvels displayed, but because of what those fleets represented: genuine cooperation between species that had once considered each other threats. Contact bearing 27 Mark IV, announced Sub Christarch Melinar from her station, her harmonic voice now carrying the confidence of someone who had found their place in a larger purpose. Configuration unknown, composition ... impossible. Elena moved to the central display where Admiral Clark's consciousness materialized, his form now permanently distributed across the station's quantum networks. The enemy scouts they had been tracking for months had finally revealed themselves, and the sight was both beautiful and terrifying. Scale analysis complete, reported Chief Engineer Thokran. Warlord Thokgar's own son, who had volunteered to serve on the integrated command crew. The young Koroth's eyes held none of his father's initial hostility toward humans, only the focused determination of a warrior facing a worthy challenge. Contact is approximately 40,000 kilometers in length, composed of what appears to be crystallized space-time itself. The thing approaching their outer sensor grid defied easy description. It moved through space like a living entity, but its composition suggested technology so advanced that it bordered on magic. Weapons that fired streams of compressed reality. Shields that existed in 17 dimensions simultaneously. Propulsion systems that seemed to rewrite the laws of physics around them. By the eternal void, whispered Dr. Ziexkala, one of Hive Queen Ziexthara's research children who had devoted herself to understanding exotic phenomena. It's not using technology. It is technology. The entire structure appears to be a single living machine. Elena felt a chill run down her spine. In the 2 years since the Alliance had formed, they had made incredible advances by combining human innovation with alien expertise. Zephyrian harmonic crystals had been integrated into human quantum processors, creating computational systems that could model reality in real time. Koroth tactical doctrine had been adapted for multidimensional warfare, allowing coordinated strikes across multiple planes of existence simultaneously. Insectoid bioengineering had produced ships that could repair themselves, adapt to new threats, and evolve countermeasures in minutes rather than months. But looking at the approaching entity, Elena wondered if all their preparations would be enough. Analysis of movement patterns suggests intelligence, reported consciousness azure through the station's communication network. The Ethereal Collective had integrated so thoroughly with human systems that their representatives now existed as pure information, able to process data at speeds that matched human neural interfaces. but not individual intelligence. This appears to be a single mind operating at a scale we have never encountered. Admiral Clark's holographic form solidified as he accessed more processing power. Estimated time to contact with our outer defenses? 17 hours at current velocity, Thoker replied. But Admiral, the entity's acceleration curve suggests it could reach our position in less than 3 if it chooses to. Then we proceed as planned, Elena announced, her voice carrying across the command center and to every ship in the combined fleet. All species, all crews, all capabilities working as one. This is what we've been preparing for. The next few hours revealed the true scope of what they faced. The approaching entity wasn't alone. As it drew closer, massive distortions in space revealed dozens of similar constructs. Each one the size of a small moon, each one radiating power signatures that dwarfed entire star systems. They're not invading, Dr. Ziexkala observed as she analyzed the formation patterns. They're investigating. These constructs appear to be exploratory vessels, but on a scale that suggests their civilization considers entire galaxies to be single research subjects. The first communication attempt came not through any technology the Alliance recognized, but through direct manipulation of spacetime itself. Reality rippled around the command center as information was literally written into the fabric of existence, translating automatically into every language, simultaneously. Curious, organic. Intelligence has achieved dimensional manipulation. This was not predicted by current models. Investigation parameters require adjustment. The words appeared not as sound but as direct understanding, implanted into every conscious mind within 1,000 light years. The casual tone was somehow more terrifying than any threat could have been. They're talking about us the way we might talk about discovering tool use in primitive species, Elena realized. To them, we're barely sapient. Admiral Clark's expression grew grimly determined. Then let's change their minds about that. What followed was not a battle in any traditional sense. The Alliance didn't attack the entity directly. Instead, they demonstrated something that the ancient civilization had apparently never encountered: coordinated evolution in real time. Human ships began phasing through dimensions that shouldn't have existed, using technologies that violated several fundamental laws of physics, but they weren't doing it alone. Zephyrian harmonic crystals were providing the dimensional anchors that made such movement stable. Koroth tactical algorithms were calculating strike patterns across 17 different planes of reality simultaneously. Insectoid bioships were adapting their physical structure to exist in multiple dimensions at once. Ethereal consciousness networks were coordinating the thoughts and actions of millions of individual minds as if they were a single organism. The entity's response was immediate and telling. Impossible. Organic intelligence cannot achieve such coordination without centralized control, scanning for master species. There isn't one. Elena broadcast back through every communication system they possessed. We're partners, equals, working together because we choose to, not because any one species controls the others. The pause that followed lasted several minutes, an eternity in terms of the speeds at which the entity operated. When it responded, the tone had changed entirely. Unprecedented, multi-species, voluntary coordination without hierarchical dominance. Request permission to study this phenomenon. The relief that swept through the command center was palpable, but Admiral Clark remained cautious. Study how? Non-invasive observation. Your cooperation would be appreciated. We have not encountered voluntary alliance between species of significantly different evolutionary paths, our models suggest. This should be impossible. It is impossible, Elena replied, a smile spreading across her face. That's what makes it interesting. Over the following months, what had begun as a potential invasion became the most extraordinary cultural exchange in galactic history. The ancient entities, calling themselves the architects, had been exploring the galaxy for millions of years, studying the rise and fall of civilizations. In all that time, they had never encountered species that chose cooperation over dominance when faced with existential threats. Your species, the lead architect eventually communicated. Human specifically possesses a trait that appears unique among advanced civilizations. When confronted with seemingly impossible challenges, you adapt rather than retreat. When faced with superior force, you innovate rather than submit. When offered the choice between controlling others and working with them, you consistently choose partnership. Hi, Christarch Velinari, now serving as the Alliance's cultural liaison, found her harmonic voice filled with wonder. Is this why you developed such incredible capabilities? Not to conquer, but to inspire? We didn't develop anything to inspire, Admiral Clark admitted. We developed it to survive. The inspiration part was accidental. No, the architect's response rippled through spacetime itself. Not accidental, emergent property of consciousness that refuses to accept limitations, your species faced extinction and chose to become extinction's master. Your allies faced humiliation and chose to become partners in greatness. Together, you have created something new, intelligence that grows stronger through diversity rather than despite it. The final revelation came months later, when the architects shared the true purpose of their eternal exploration. They had been searching not for resources or territory, but for hope. Their own civilization had grown so advanced that they had transcended physical existence entirely, becoming pure thought without form or substance. But in achieving perfect unity, they had lost something essential, the ability to grow, to change, to surprise themselves. You have shown us that advancement does not require the sacrifice